Tonight, a great-grandmother bashed and beaten in her home for a plasma TV. It's a crime that will shock Sydney. Police in our west are hunting 2 men. Also tonight, gridlock, breakdowns and delays. How the big wet caused big chaos. Sydney under siege, military training goes off with a bang. Guilty the P-plater who clocked 249 kilometres an hour on the M5. And X marks the spot, your guide to our New Year's celebrations.
This is 9 News with Peter Overton.
Good evening. A great-grandmother is recovering in hospital after a sickening attack by 2 men who burst into her St Mary's home. In what police have described as a low act, she was beaten with her own walking stick, then kicked as she lay helpless on the floor.
This photograph, taken just 4 hours ago, should cause shock and outrage. Eleanor Pirelli, barely recognisable after being savagely bashed by 2 men who broke into her St Mary's home.
They actually beat her up. They hit her with their own walking stick, and then when she was on the ground, they actually laid the boot in.
The fact she was 86 didn't deter the attackers from unleashing brutal force.
They broke it, yeah. The walking stick's broken in half.
For 41 years, the great-grandmother of 9 children has lived in this home. At 1:40 this morning, she was awoken by noises at the back door. When she went to investigate, she was pushed to the ground by the pair, one of them armed with a knife.
Very angry, very annoyed that they actually can do this to a helpless old lady.
The men ransacked the house and escaped with a television worth a couple of $100, leaving their elderly victim dazed and bleeding on the floor.
She's pretty much screaming out in pain.
Eleanor managed to call for help with this emergency device that she wears around her neck. The operator could hear raised voices and knew something was badly wrong.
She was able to raise the alarm where police were called. Without one of those, there could have been dire problems.
So, Damien, how's Mrs Pirelli going tonight?
Well, Pete, the latest is that X-rays have cleared her of any fractures, which is great news, and their doctors are extremely confident she will make a full recovery. Now, as to the investigation, police are examining a knife they recovered from her front yard. They're looking for 2 Caucasian men wearing dark clothing, and they stress they're wearing large boots, which we've pointed out that they were used to kick Mrs Pirelli when she was on the ground. A detective I spoke to said it was a despicable crime and they're throwing all the resources at this to arrest those responsible as soon as they can, Pete.
Yes, good on the police. Damien, thank you. In a bizarre coincidence, in the same suburb just 2 hours later, a teenager was stabbed to death. He was out with friends when he got involved in a fight. Police don't believe there's any connection with the bashing of Eleanor Pirelli.
A neighbourhood in lockdown as scores of police search for a murder weapon and a killer. Just after 3 this morning, 2 groups of young men were involved in a vicious street fight. A 17-year-old boy was killed, stabbed repeatedly in the chest and back.
We're still to determine the weapon. It's a sharp implement.
Neighbours are getting used to this sort of violence.
The amount of times we've walked around here and been chased with people with knives, had to run. It's always, every night.
Maple Road, they say, is being held hostage by gangs of booze-fuelled young men who run riot on their street after dark.
I wouldn't say there's a gang problem, but there has been some crime in the area.
You come to this side of Maple Road, it's just like a hellhole.
3 homes have been firebombed, including this one, just days ago. Locals living in this street say the violence has left them afraid in their own homes. They're worried that speaking out might make them targets, but they're fed up and desperate for something to be done. And they're not the only ones. A new report from the Auditor-General says that in New South Wales, only 1 in 5 people feels safe in their own home during the day.
What are the police going to do about stopping it?
Sarah Harris, 9 News.